Hi, everyone. My name is Amber Lyn. I'm an author, life coach, and community director for Pathway to Hope. Pathway to Hope is a supportive online community for women looking to learn how to trust themselves again, set boundaries, and gain clarity for healthier relationships. I'm here today with Patrick Doyle. He's an author, speaker, and expert in emotional and spiritual abuse, and he's here today to answer your questions. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to be here.
So, question we have is what does narcissism look like in a church context?
Well, generally, narcissism in the church is spiritualized. And churches, as a rule, don't live in reality. For example, people don't go to church to be honest. They go to church to comply with the culture of the church. And I encourage you to do an experiment. Go to different churches and notice the different requirements. Any group of people you're in, there are what we call stated, agreements, and then there are implied agreements. So, if you're going to a Baptist church and you raise your hands like you would in a Pentecostal church, you're going to get looked at sideways.
For sure.
You go to a Pentecostal church and you don't raise your hands, well, you might not be too spiritual. So, there's all these nuances, and that's just two. That doesn't count all the many different theological differences. And, there are, according to research, at a minimum, roughly 30,000 denominations. So that's 30,000 different ways people are saying this is how you do it. And we've read the Bible and this is what we think you should do. So at 30,000, that's a lot of fractals of truth. That's not, how do you know? So you go to a church and they have implied and they have stated agreements. So if you're in a church setting and honesty isn't the goal, which although we might say it is, practically it's not, and someone is being narcissistic and no one confronts them, what do you think's going to happen? That person's going to gobble up power, because that's what they're about. Narcissistic people are about power and control. They want to be in control because they believe one of the cornerstones of narcissism is denial. Now, I know a lot of people talk about narcissism and stuff, but as a label, and I think it's good for the conversation, but I don't tend to look at people as narcissists. I tend to look at people based on how much denial do they have. People say this all the time. Well, they died from addiction. No, their addiction was the symptom. What they died from was denial. They kept denying the harm that they were doing to themselves, and that's what killed them, right? So narcissism is the same thing. The problem with narcissists is they are so convinced of their own lies that they believe them. This is why they're so convincing. They can go into a group of people and say all this stuff, and everybody's like, oh, wow, what a great person. And they're lying the whole time. And the person that's with the narcissist is like, I can't tell you how many women that I've worked with, their husband's the pastor and he's this great guy. And every time somebody says something nice about him, they want to roll their eyes out of the back of their head because they're like, that's not true. But the persona is very ironclad. So in church communities where people are not honest, narcissists thrive because they can lie and rationalize and minimize and gaslight and justify, and people just go along with it. And then when you're doing that and spiritualizing at the same time, wow, that makes for a very fertile environment for the narcissist. And many leaders in churches are narcissists. I've seen it for decades.
When you say you've seen it, what do you mean?
I've seen many men. My business is being a counselor, and so in the Christian world, 95% of my clients were Christians, and many of them were high profile pastors from all over the country. And I've seen their spiritual narcissism. They believe the lies that they have told themselves, and then they have convinced themselves that God is behind them, and then they use a splattering of Bible verses to convince themselves and others, and then they have a position of power. And they're just leaving a wake of bodies emotionally and spiritually in their path.
Mm.
it's not commensurate with gentle, meek, and mild. It's harmful and unrepentant and self-centered. It's and all justified with the Bible and spiritual things. And I could list a number of high-profile pastors who've had this happen to them. Everyone knows someone. Everyone's heard a story. And why is that? Well, because the theological undergirding supports it. That's how it happens. And then the congregation, they want somebody they can, you know, look up to. And even if I have to look past a few things, that's fine.
Mm,
Because we're part of something cool, or we're doing the Lord's work, or we're evangelizing the world. To me, that's misguided.
hmm Yeah. Well, thank you.
You're welcome.
If this spoke to you, we've created more free resources in the link below. Go ahead and click that. And in the meantime, we'll see you next time.
Bye
All right.
bye.
Bye.